My name is Sherry Story. I am Jimmy Simpson's second daughter. I'm in the middle. The story behind how Safe Haven and the Jimmy Simpson Foundation got started begins with my dad being injured. He had a severe brain injury, and from that, my mama, who is full of grace and faith, the idea came to her that there was definitely a need for a residential care facility for brain injured patients. And the thing I remember the most about going through that period with Mama and Vicki and Jeff is when Mama got a hold of it and the idea came to her, she was sure that's what God wanted her to do. And she brought that idea to the three of us, and I knew when she brought it to us that this was going to happen, that it was going to happen without a doubt. I can say that I don't believe it would have lasted as long if Vicki had not been in charge of getting Safe Haven to where it is today. Mom worked there for a very long time, and her and Vicki worked well together, but I am so grateful for my sister and my brother and what they had done to get the foundation going and to provide care and hope for families who don't have that. So I'm so proud of my sister and brother and my mama. So please join me in a conversation about where the foundation came from and the legacy of that foundation with my mama and Vicki and Jeff. It's amazing. It is amazing the people that we've been in contact with.
My name is Carolyn Simpson, and I am the wife of Jimmy Simpson of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation, and I am the founder of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation.
I'm Vicki Hodge. I'm the CEO of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation and daughter of Jimmy Simpson.
I'm Jeff Simpson. I'm the chairman of the board of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation, but I'm also the youngest son.
The only son.
And then the only son that they had.
I want to tell you the story of how we got started and a little bit about mine and Jimmy's family relationship from the time that we met. And I was 9 and said I was going to marry him when I met him. We were married in 1957, and then we started our family in September of 1958 with a little blonde-headed girl.
Yeah, that'd be me.
1960, we had another daughter, and then 1965, our son was born.
The best of all.
And we lived what we called a normal family life with our ups and downs and a lot of activity in our church and our community. My husband was a deacon in the church, and like I said, we lived a normal life that we considered normal, that everybody was living at that time. And then in 1980, we moved from Mattman County, Tennessee to Walker County, Georgia. And at that time, the girls were married and they had started their own families, and Jeff was still at home in high school. Then in 1995, we had an accident at the house that a gas can exploded and burned my husband 50% of his body. And at that time, we didn't know whether he would live or whether he wouldn't. And after about a week of intensive care in the burn unit at Erlanger Hospital, they finally told us that he was going to make it, but he might lose his legs. Well, we got through that, and he didn't lose his legs, thank God. We were at Erlanger in the burn unit for a couple of months, and then we went over to Siskin for rehab. Nobody had realized that the doctors had found the aneurysm in the burn unit until we went to Mayo Clinic. And we had to go to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, because he got a staph infection in the burn unit. And that's what the lump on his chest wall was. It was the killer staph. And so in the meantime, when we went to Mayo Clinic, Jimmy underwent several surgeries, and it was a very painful time for him. But we were there until November, and they dismissed him, and we came home. And from that time, he started improving, getting better. And his doctor said we're keeping a watch on the aneurysm that they found. And it began to grow. So his doctor said that we've got to take it out before it bursts, because if it bursts, you only have 20 minutes to live. So he went into the hospital for surgery to have the aneurysm removed. And he underwent the surgery well. So he went out, they put him out on the floor at that time. On Saturday night, we were looking to go home in a couple of days. He was doing so well. So he went to bed on Saturday night, and the hospital beds were left down. So he went to turn over in his sleep, and he slid out of the bed. But let's go back a minute to when they brought him out of ICU. They left what they call a swan's cast going into his heart. But it was still in there, and when he went to turn over in this bed, the bottom part of his body started sliding out of the bed, and it broke that swan's cast, and he started bleeding profusely. He was without oxygen to the brain for at least 15 minutes. So he suffered anoxia brain damage. At that time, the future for me and Jimmy and our children was very uncertain. We had been told by medical people, and very knowledgeable medical people, that he would never get better. He would never be the same. He was not taking care of a 5-month-old baby. And at this time, too, Don Brock of Aztec Industry, I would have lost everything that Jimmy had worked all of our life for, because I was a stay-home mom. When we went to Siskins for the physical rehab, the goals that the rehab doctors set, you have to meet those goals in order for your insurance or for you to be eligible to stay at Siskin. And so they could not set a goal for Jimmy to reach, because physically he had no control over his body. Mentally, we don't know what was going on in his head. A company out of Atlanta, it was a business out of Atlanta that we started looking for places that we could put him. And they told me to call a case manager named Lynn Barker. And to this day, she's still involved with us. And she called me one stormy night, and she said that somebody had told her to call me because my husband had been injured. And she took Jimmy on as her patient, but along with her, there was a lot of other people that were involved in Jimmy's care. So when Siskin said that we had to find a place to put him, then we did move. We went from Siskin to Emory Rehab in Atlanta.
When he was in Atlanta, and it wasn't about his care for me, it was her. Because I knew that as far as medically, Daddy was getting the care he needed, but I didn't know if she was. And I remember telling her one time, I can't lose both of you. I've already lost one. I can't lose both of you. We've got to see that you're taken care of. That you have got to be the one that comes through this. And so for me, it was like looking at, I'm not losing both. I mean, I'm not losing just one, but I could lose both. And I did not. I was afraid. I did not want that to happen. So although during that time was exhausting for both Jeff and I'm sure, going back and forth, it was still important that we as a family that we supported each other. But I was angry because I didn't understand why this has had to happen. I was scared because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, both for her future, Daddy's future, but as our future as a family. What are we going to look like once all of this is over?
The thing I remember the most, and what comes to me when I think about that time, is I felt very helpless. I couldn't fix him, and I couldn't help her, and I couldn't help my sister and brother. I have a special needs child at home, and I'm so thankful for them, my sister and brother, because they had to step in and do it between them, and they never resented it. But I was so helpless. There was nothing I could do to help any of them, and I was terrified because I was afraid we'd lose Mama too, or I would lose Vicky, or I would lose Jeff. And that was terrifying to me. So that's my strongest memory, is that feeling of helplessness. I couldn't make it go away, and I couldn't fix anything. And I wanted to fix it, and it was not fixable.
We were at Emory 2 or 3 months, and they did the physical therapy and all that, and there again the same rules apply for, you've got to, for your insurance or anything to keep paying, you've got to be able to set a goal and to meet that goal. And he still wasn't able to do that. At this time, there was Dr. Harbin introduced us to another doctor. His name was Dr. Stoudemire, and he did a lot of clinical trials on medications and a lot of different things for brain injury. They wanted to try a medication trial with Jimmy, but in order to do that, they would have to remove him from all medications that he was on that was trying to control some of the agitation and all of that, and then start from scratch, and as Dr. Stoudemire put it, make a soup mix that would work. But the medication worked. The soup mix worked. It didn't bring him back, but it did calm him down. And he was able to, at least his body was able to rest, which it hadn't been. I mean, he would go for hours, and I'm talking hours, days, without sleep at all. But the medication did calm him down to where he could rest his body.
Like she said, there were still, even though he had a soup mix, he was calm. There were still breakthroughs that he was loud. He would turn in that bed and turn, and I don't mean turn over and over. I mean sit and spin. There was different things that we could do that would calm him. It took a big toll on her because a lot of times it was her presence, her voice, even her perfume scent that would calm him. But he could be stubborn. And even after we moved him to the foundation and we opened the safe haven, and he didn't want to get up, he would make his body extremely stiff. And the staff could not manage him. You can't take a 6-foot guy and move him if he don't want to be moved. But he could hear her come in the back door, and he would become pliant. Yeah, I'll get up. I'll do whatever you ask. Mm-hmm. So it was those kind of things.
And I had a good support network, not just with the children. I have a very, very dear friend, and her name was Faye Hawkins. And her husband was the kindest man besides Jimmy and my dad that I guess I'd ever known. And while we were at Emory, if the children had to work and couldn't stay with me, then his wife would stay with me. I had a dear cousin that was like a brother, and he paid for an apartment next to Emory's for me to stay in so I could get rest and all that, and she would come and stay with me all week long, and her husband was willing and wanted her to do that. But then, like I said, my cousin that paid for the apartment, he was from Macmillan County, where we were from, and a lot of the funds that he had to pay for the apartment and give me for food was taken up in our community and in the town that we lived in, and where people knew Jimmy and knew what kind of a man he was. Because when I started looking for placement, I couldn't find a place that I wanted, or that would take him, really. So we decided to go home. Well, in order to go home, he could not stay in a hospital bed or in any bed. So my son-in-law, Vicky's husband, built him a bed. And it was like a huge playpen with padded walls on the sides. Get in both sides of it. And at times, all the grandchildren would be in there with him. So in order for us to bring him home and for him to have a safe place to stay, well, Rick and Jeff put that bed together, and so we brought him home. When we did bring him home, he had to have nursing care around the clock. And Don Brock again stepped in and paid for all of that.
When we seen that he was going to have to come home, kind of back up a little in time. During that time, I had decided to build a house right next to her, and to be there, like Vicki said, her concern and my other sister was that she was taken care of, and that she was getting everything she needed. So in this process of all this going on, I was building a house right up on top of the hill from her. So when they said, well, come on now, as me, I traveled a lot at that time for Aztec. I worried about her, I worried about Vicki, and we'd already been through a lot of, like she said, was exhausted from the burns up to this point. Now I have this responsibility. Now he's coming home now, I'm gonna have to make sure everything there's taken care of too with him.
When we brought him home, before the litigation was over, I noticed a change in how our family unit, although we all had changes to make and adaptions to make, but Jimmy would never have wanted his grandchildren to have been denied the privilege of our home and the happiness that they had had there before, and the at-homeness that they had. And when the changes started being made within the family unit, and I saw that it was not a good change for the children to grow up in, because they had been used to, this open house. So, the kids and I sat down and talked it over, and I said, I want to help somebody else with this money, not just take care of him. So what if we find us a place to take care of 2 other people? At that time, we all agreed that that would be a good place to put the money. Well, we started looking for a piece of property that I would want to put a building on that would benefit people like Jimmy. Because I could not find a place in the United States that was capable of giving him the kind of care that I wanted him to have. So when I found this piece of property that was about 2 minutes from the house. So, and I prayed about it, and the kids were praying about it, and so there was a doctor in California that does a lot of experimental work on brain injury. My cousin said, I'll take you out there and make an appointment, and we'll go see him and take all of Jimmy's records and see if there's anything that he can do. So I told the realtor, I said, I'm going to California to talk to this doctor. And if I come back, if this piece of property is still for sale, then I want to buy it. Well, it was still for sale. No, the doctor didn't have a miracle cure for Jimmy. But I still had hope that someday somebody would.
The day we walked the property, before she was wanting to purchase it, we all got together, me and Vicky and Mama and my other sister, and just walked the property. There was just a feeling there that this was right, that this was going to work. Don't know how, but by God's grace, 25 years now, has it been easy? No, all the time. But by His grace, we've survived and been able to help a lot of other people. The one vision that she had, that wanted just to help other families that was in need, because we knew that nothing else was out there for them, and that was in the same kind of shape that we was in.
When we come back and started about the property, and so there was a house on it, but it had to be renovated. Well, during the renovation of that house and getting together all of the medical things that had to go into the house and the licensures and the permits, my daughter-in-law, Glenda, and I sat in my bedroom for weeks working on the licensures and all the permits and getting all the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And then Jimmy's nephew, that was a construction that built houses, he was doing all the renovations to the house. And as Vicki reminded me the other day that she and I and Glenda did a lot of interviews for staff, sitting on buckets or using sawhorses as tables. And at the time, we got licensed for a 6-bed facility, and then a few years went by and we got licensed for a 12-bed facility. And now we're trying to get a building built so that we can have a 24-bed facility.
Now, Daddy, we moved down there in May of '98 to kind of get him acclimated to the new surroundings, that kind of thing. When we looked at bringing him home, and Mother got us together as a family and said, I want to take care of 2 or 3 people, my first thought was, well, you've lost your mind. We can barely do what we're doing, but as she explained how she wanted it to flow and what she thought, I came to the realization that when we brought him home with a support network many families don't have. They don't have family and friends willing to step in. They don't have wives and husbands like Jeff's wife and my husband that's willing to say, yeah, you go do what you need to do. I got this at home. If you don't have that support network, you're by yourself. All of these people that came together during this time for us, we could never ever repay. There's not enough money or time that we could give that we could pay these people back. But by opening Safe Haven and by taking on patients, and in a lot of cases in Safe Haven, we have beds available for those that can't afford to pay. It's a first come, first served basis. But that's how we give back. That's our way of saying, I can't repay you, but I can do this for somebody else now. I can maybe make that journey just a little bit easier for another family. I think the biggest thing for me too is the helplessness you feel. You can't fix it. No matter what you do, I couldn't fix Daddy. I couldn't make him better, and I couldn't fix it for her because I couldn't give her what she wanted, which was Daddy. The best thing that I could do is take what she thought she wanted to do and try and work it. And that's what we did. In looking back over the years, I see a lot of God's grace and providence in what we did, whether we knew it at the time or not. And because our feet are set on this path, I agree with Jeff, it's what we're supposed to be doing. Did he cause any of this? No, he didn't. But I do believe he took a really bad thing that happened and turned something good into it. And by the grace of God and a lot of other people's help, we're gonna continue this. We're gonna make this building work into a 24-bed facility.
My hope is that when we get this building built, we can continue to look into the future and let God use us in the way He wants to use us, to help families that were in our position, that we had people that could financially support us. So I would hope that in the future we can, as maybe my grandchildren take over, or maybe great-grandchildren in the future, but they can continue this this desire that I have, that Jimmy would have had.
I hope the future holds for Safe Haven that it grows even more than what we have envisioned now, that it grows to cover the entire country, the entire United States, not just in the care that we give our patients and our clients and their families, but as a source of information and for those families that just need to do some research. Because I remember when Vicki and Mama and all of us, but especially Vicki and Mama, started looking for what can we find to help Daddy, we found that there was not a lot of research. There was not a lot of things that we could look up. I would really love to see the foundation become that source for these families they're torn apart, they're heartbroken, they're scared to death. They're all of these things they're feeling at one time. They're feeling helpless. And I just think the foundation can step up and help with that. I've seen it happen. Even, I live in Gadsden, and even where I live, when a brain injury is brought up, I immediately resource back to the foundation, just to give them help, just to show them you're not alone.
When we're no longer here as the root family, that people can look back and also look forward and see the reason why that we're doing it and helping people, that they'll want to continue to try to expand, but never lose the vision of where it started, because that's where it's going to expand from, no matter if it's 25 years from now. I want them to be able to walk back. It's because of the things that happened, the people that was involved. This place was able to be started, and now look at it, that it's been able to expand, and instead of 28 families, that number could be astronomical, and the need that's there in this country, or in this world actually, for that kind of help and that kind of care for people.
I think my daddy would have wanted his legacy to be he was full of life. He was full of laughter and full of love. And I think Daddy would have wanted people to remember that about him. He was a very giving person. He was very supportive of his family. He loved his family. And I think Daddy would have wanted that to be his legacy. I think he would have wanted people to think of those things when they think of him.
When I look back on it, on our lives, and look at each one of my children and think about the process we had to go through to get started in the first place, how God provided the education that they didn't know they would need. Vicki worked in nonprofit. Sherry worked in nonprofit. And she worked at Small Business Bureau. And Jeff has always been a leader and a talker. He's just like his daddy. And he could stand up and talk to anybody and express himself and make you feel exactly what he's feeling. And I can see God's hand working in all of this.
The future of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation, Safe Haven, I see as unlimited possibilities. I see, in my mind's eye, I see a full campus of different services that we can offer for brain injured individuals. I see an expansion. I see not only doing low level, but doing a higher functioning. Let's take that support group we're running and let's run with it. Let's look at an adult daycare there. Let's look at the different types of services that we can provide, not just here, but across the Southeast. There is such a lack of resources for any type of brain injury that this could be a placement for this. This could be the future.
If you want to continue on this path with us to build this building and go down this path, we would so welcome it. And I'm sure God will bless you for it. And that's what this is all about, is letting you know the story of the Jimmy Simpson Foundation, the kind of man he was, the kind of family that he produced, and what he would have wanted us to do with the settlement is being put to good use.